What is up, Summoners? It is so good to be back, and we're going to be doing a ProGuides OP picker ban now on patch 11.9. These are the champions that are a little bit overtuned for one reason or another, so they have the power to affect your games more than they otherwise should. In light of that, you'll be wanting to deny their existence altogether or secure them for your own team. Do note that the champions in this video are generally the most meta picks for the role, and as a result, most of them are picked or banned pretty frequently. If you're looking for champions to play that are much less contested, check out our top 3 champions to main series. The champions in those videos are still strong enough to carry with, but they're low in both the pick and ban rate, meaning that you're more likely to get your hands on them. Starting off things, in the top lane we've got Darius, who is probably the most hated, longest reigning OP pick of all time. His impressive ability to all-in as early as level 1 while still having a very strong scaling into the late game makes him a power pick with pretty much no glaring weaknesses. Even in his worst matchups, it's a skill matchup where a single mistake can cost his opponent their life. And once Darius has the lead, even as a so-called counter, he can easily take that lead and run with it, snowballing and getting kill after kill every single time if at least one of his summoners is available. If you're gonna be a dirty Darius abuser, there are 2 things to note. First, he's such a strong lane bully, you'll be trading as much as possible, but by doing so, your Q guarantees that you'll be shoving in waves. Pushing will give you priority, but will also make you an easy gank target, so beware. Although Darius is so OP that you can often 1v2 the enemy top and jungle, especially once you have your ultimate. The second thing is that no matter how fed you are, you should avoid teamfighting without Ghost up. Flash is nice for chasing over the walls, but Ghost is pretty much necessary to counter the one weakness of being kited. So when summoners are down, tell your teammates to stall until you have them back up, then look to fight. Just side lane in the meantime. Like I said before, at this point, I think Darius is pretty much the most hated OP pick of all time. It's not just how strong he is, it's the fact that he can never, ever get a nerf that puts him in the dirt. I personally believe that almost all champions can be balanced in some type of a healthy way, but in this case, I'm gonna be honest, I'm so sick of seeing him that I just want Riot to gut him and put his win rate in the low 40s for a little bit. Just a little bit, Riot, please. I absolutely hate Darius, if I didn't make that clear enough. And that brings us to today's question of the day. What champ do you hate the most? Whether you want to see them beaten to death with a nerf bat, reworked, or just completely removed from the game, let us know your answers in the comments down below. Also, alongside Darius, I know I also hate Pyke. Even though he's not the strongest champion right now, he's still never fun to go against. Anyway, our second OP top laner is Urgot. He combines being a ranged damage dealer with a beefy juggernaut, and once you've scaled up a little bit, he has the damage to annihilate squishies in seconds while also being able to completely shred tanks. But before you reach that point, you have to get through the laning phase. Urgot can do decent bursts of damage with his Q and a passive empowered auto attack, but those shotgun knees can take a long time to reload in the early levels. You won't really get much out of forcing fights. In fact, you'll probably lose to pretty much any other top lane in early extended fights. You want to keep trades pretty brief, focusing more on farming up and clearing waves. Try to keep your passive in mind as you're farming. If you do need to push, cycle through each leg for a quicker wave clear, and if you're trying to freeze or let the wave come to you, make sure that you're last hitting with the side that's on cooldown. As you get more levels into your W and your passive cooldown starts getting lower, you can start to trade more aggressively, but you don't truly hit your huge power spike until about 2 items. At this point, very few champions can take you on in a 1v1. With a single full combo, including empowered autos, it's usually enough to bring down almost any target. One thing to know about our build, after Titanic, we have items to beef you up for teamfights, but if you want a more aggressive build, go Death Stance third, then Sterax, and then finish off with a Chemtank Chainsword. Alternatively, if you're dealing with tanks, go Black Cleaver as your third item for some extra armor shred. Next up, for the jungle, we'll start things off with Fiddle. With the speed demon meta taking a heavy blow this patch, all the other junglers are getting an indirect buff. With Fiddle already being an S tier pick prior to all of this, being one of the few champions that can be reliably picked into Udyr or Hecarim, he's now going to be in our top spot as the #1 jungler in the game. His ultra fast and healthy clear allows you to full clear your entire jungle on the first pass through it, and you can still make it in time for Scuttle Crab. And while Fiddlestick's lack of gap closer pre-6 may make it harder to force fights, if your opponent is the one coming at you, more often than not, you'll be able to hold your ground against them. But if you don't have lane priority, make sure that you're not contesting. While you do win most 1v1s, it's usually a pretty long fight, and it's not worth coin flipping the game when you're playing something that is pretty much guaranteed to carry as long as you scale up. Your main priority is to constantly clear out your camps to farm up for 6, only ganking when it's basically guaranteed to be a kill. Once you do have your ultimate, you'll completely flip the script, forcing ganks anywhere you can. Just be sure that you're using your trinket to ensure that there's no ward revealing you before you go in. That way you can land a guaranteed fear into a silence combo and one-shot your target. Once you secure a kill or 2, just go right back to farming till your ultimate is back up. Never take part in a fight when your ultimate is down, you're basically useless without it. And with that in mind, you want to make sure that your ult timers are lining up with the dragon spawns. It's no use ulting for a single kill a full minute before dragon is up, since the champion you kill will have plenty of time to get back to dragon, but you won't have your ultimate up for the fight. Another OP pick for the jungle is Elise. The only thing as satisfying as acing the enemy team in a team fight with the 5-man fiddle ult is closing out the game before he even reaches that point of the 5v5 happening. So if you prefer that early game style, the Spider Queen is a pick for you. Playing her in a hyper-aggressive way isn't just an option. Elise has really good single target damage, meaning that she takes buffs, gromps, and scuttle pretty quickly, but she is severely lacking when it comes to multi-target camps. If you spend your time constantly trying to clear the jungle, you'll be completely outpaced by the enemy jungler, fall behind, and be useless. You may be thinking, well, what if my laners won't stop pushing in? I have to farm them, don't I? Wrong. While diving in the early levels may be suicide with just about any other jungler, Elise can easily dive as early as 3. Just look for any lane that has good burst damage and, well, go for it. Not only does this get your snowball rolling, but it's also a pretty tilting experience to be dove with basically no counterplay early in the game. Most people would say Elise falls off, and while that is true in the sense that she doesn't provide the same results in a full 5v5 teamfight as other champions, her damage is actually insane as long as you build her to deal damage. That's why our build includes Medjai, skipping that cowardly hourglass. If you can't quite close out the game early, this full damage build allows you to one-shot just about any target that you land your cocoon on. Play for picks so you never have to fight a fight with fair numbers, so you can brute force your way into taking dragons and barons. Playing Elise and shutting out games while it's still in the opening stages sound like a lot of fun, but when you lock her in without a clue on how to actually execute early game hyper-aggression, you're not going to end up with a great outcome. I've seen countless of players try to force way too hard in the wrong lanes at the wrong times, and the result is actually them tilting, forcing even more, and dying again and again. If you're interested in that playstyle that's hyper-aggressive, but you're afraid of ending up to be that type of player, we've got you covered. At ProGuides.com, our top-tier coaches are ready to teach you everything that you need to know about climbing the ladder. So, whether you need help with the general concept of being aggressive, or you need more advanced champion-specific advice, head over to ProGuides.com and book your session now. By doing this, you'll level up your game and reach your goals for the season. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the video. Taking a look at the mid lane, our first pick is Katarina. While many of the other top picks in other roles have taken some hits in the last couple of patches, Katarina remains untouched, and will continue to be an unbearable champion to deal with. For an inexperienced player, laning against Kat is like the mid lane version of Darius. If you don't understand how to exactly play around her daggers, the result is a very surprising amount of damage and usually an early death. But even if the other lanes know what you're doing, it seems like Kat might always find a way to weasel her way into the game. She has good pushing power, and she can use it to look for roams for easier kills, usually against squishy bot lane targets. Kat is the type of champion that you do not want picking up free kills, giving her an inch, I'm so tired of hearing that, and she'll take a mile. Once the snowball gets started, it never stops, with her shampoo making her so slippery it feels like you can never really pin her down. Another big reason for her success as an assassin is that she's not limited to being one of these champions that has to look for isolated kills. In fact, being in the middle of a teamfight is her preferred environment. In a chaotic brawl, it can be pretty difficult for opponents to keep track of your daggers on the ground. All it takes is a single champion stepping near one of Katarina's daggers for her to pop off, getting reset after reset, and bringing everybody down. Know that our build is for optimal damage, but it's pretty likely that some comps will call for Zanya's Hourglass. Definitely pick one up over Lichbane when necessary. Our second mid laner is Diana. While Kat is more of a slippery, quick assassin that looks to shampoo all around the fight to dodge threats, Diana has a more direct dive right into the fray approach, feeling almost like a bruiser with her potential for engage, all while also having the massive burst of damage that comes with being an assassin. You'd think that having such a strong team fighting would limit Diana to have a weak early game, but she's actually one of the strongest laners that you can throw in mid. She has tons of AoE damage to shove in waves, with her W shielding helping to mitigate incoming poke from your lane opponent. If they overstep, you can even land your Q and jump on them for a huge burst of damage or potentially even a kill if they can't disengage the fight. This fighting strength means that you'll be every jungler's best friend, with you being able to get priority for scuttle crabs and being an incredibly strong skirmisher when it comes down to fighting to the death. Once you're out of the laning phase, as I've already said, you'll have an amazing team fighting strength. In fact, Diana is one of the few melee carries that can provide hard engage for her team thanks to her ultimate. If you end up serving this role as a primary engage, make sure you pick up Zanya's pretty early, either as your second or third completed item. Moving things down to the bot lane, our first ADC is Vayne. While it's pretty common for people to think of Vayne as an anti-tank specialist, she's honestly just OP no matter who she's dealing with. In fact, the build that we have here gives you massive crits that allow you to knock down squishy targets in just a few hits. When you're dealing with multiple tanky targets, you'll just want to swap up the build to have Gensu's over Infinity Edge, Blade of the Rune King over Bloodthirster, and Lord Dominic's Regard as your last item. Despite her hyper carry status, Vayne is capable of pretty strong trading in lane as long as you can land enough hits to proc Silver Bolts. While you can technically use your E to proc Silver Bolts, you should rarely do so. It's usually better to sit on the cooldown and use it defensively to disengage when the enemy bot tries to go on you, or to give you a way to push back the jungler if they come in for a gank. That said, you won't always have a great lane. If you're stuck against a heavy pushing bot lane like Kate and Zyra, you have to start Doran Shield and concede the early game, which is never fun to play. And you either want to wait for a jungle gank, or if you have an engaged support, just wait for an all-in opportunity if they land CC. As long as you hold on and scale up, you'll reach the point where you can hard carry fights, using your stealth and tumbles to dodge incoming threats and mow down your opponents in the front to back fights. Our second pick for ADC is Jhin. When you want an absolutely lane dominant pick that still has plenty of scaling, with insanely hard hitting crits that completely obliterate the targets, he's the pick for you. When I say Jhin is lane dominant, that doesn't mean that you can just run at your opponent and start fighting them from level 1. Like the character himself, you want to start playing off methodically, trading mostly around your 4th shot and looking for grenade bounces onto your lane opponents. As you start picking up more items and start getting more points into your queue, your damage really starts to ramp up. And if you can chain your W's route with an aggressive support engage, you can reach the point where you can go for all-in kills pretty quickly. One thing to note is that some Jhin players actually prefer skipping taking E, opting out to max Q and W ASAP. We actually recommend against that. E gives you some extra push control, some instant pushing power for getting lane priority, taking resets, and the traps can also help reveal and slow incoming jungle ganks. With Jhin's ultimate being an execute with its very appropriate name, Curtain Call, you generally don't want to open up with it when you're taking a fight, at least not in a bot lane alone in a 2v2. Save it to finish off your foes after a fight where they're already low. That being said, if you have a jungle coming in for a gank, or you're just later into the parts of the game where you're grouped up and looking for a pick, you can open up with their ultimate, using the ult to slow up targets and be chased down and caught by your team. Rounding out our list with some supports, our first OP pick is Thresh. As we predicted in the previous videos, the last 2 attempts at nerfing the Chain Warden has been unsuccessful, and in the right hands, he's more than capable of carrying games with his potential for playmaking, peeling, and saving carries with clutch lanterns. Starting as early as level 1, Thresh gives you the ability to bully the enemy laners with his hard-hitting auto attacks. Thanks to the wind-up damage from a flay, simply walk up, flay them, and smack them with an attack, then back off before they can return the damage. If it's too unsafe, just use your autos to push in the wave with your ADC and get that level 2 first, saving Flay to disengage any enemy aggression. Once you hit level 2, take Q and fish for hooks. Anytime you land one, even if you don't take the hook all the way into the enemy, attempt to walk up if they're close enough and land an auto attack. Trading patterns will vary depending on who you're laning against, and if your opponents are a low threat, look to flay them in immediately. But if you're dealing with a scary support like Leona or Rel, who can turn a trade on you if you waste your E, save it to disengage when they try. Aside from being on the offensive, Thresh is invaluable as a support for all carries, but especially for immobile hyper carries, who can use his lantern to escape engaged attempts. With this in mind, you want to be planning how to use your cooldown before a teamfight happens. For example, if you have an immobile carry like Jinx and you're up against a combo like Jarvan Rumble, it's pretty mandatory to save your lantern to save her from certain death. So, don't waste a cooldown on lanterning in another teammate for an engage. Finishing off our list, we have Lulu. She's already been one of the top picks for supports for the past several patches, and for some reason, she's received a buff on this one. Gotta sell those Space Groove skins somehow, right? Anyway, what makes Lulu such an incredibly strong pick is that she's a hyper-scaling enchanter that also has a very strong laning phase. In fact, as long as she has an ADC that can fight with her or is a little bit competent, she can often win 2v2s even against kill lanes like Leona and Nautilus. This fighting strength comes largely from Pixie, whose passive auto attacks really starts to add up in extended fights. On top of her high damage output, Lulu's W is a massively underrated ability. While everybody knows it's great for buffing up hyper carries, most of the opponents don't account for the polymorph function of the ability when they dash in for what they think is an easy kill. The result is turning them into a helpless bouncing cupcake and either a lost trade or even death. Once you're out of lane, the ability to turbo buff a hyper carry's DPS with the damage from Pixie and auto attacks from her W is huge, all the while keeping you safe from threats with your shield and your ultimate. When dealing with particularly fed divers, polymorph renders them useless, giving your teammates a chance to melt them before anything gets done. And that is it for the OP Picker Ban 11.9 edition. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to do subs so you never miss out on the meta guides. Remember, let us know what champ you hate the most in the comments down below. And one last thing, don't forget to check our Discord in the description box below where you can enter our giveaway or just hang out and be part of the community. I will definitely be there, so honestly, if you want to talk to me or do any of that stuff, hit me up. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.